Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Still see people coming in, which is pretty exciting, but we're going to start anyway. We have a lot of things to cover. Want to make sure that we get through it, and we'll reward the people that were on time to the presentation. Um, really unprecedented attention to this webinar about the new CSP requirements. This specific webinar will be focused on the security requirements. I'm Guillaume Boisvert, the Director of Product Innovation at Sherweb. I'm also the General Manager for Office Protect. I'm joined today by Camille Loec, who's Product Manager on Office Protect as well. And since there were so many of you that were showing up and attending this webinar, we brought our expert, Alex Laflamme. What's your official title, Alex? Because to me, you're just genius. And
Oh, thank you. But it's changing. It's going to be Microsoft Partner Advisor, because we used to explain the program so the partners would be able to do it on their own. But now it's kind of like explaining taxes to them. It no longer makes sense. It's better to just give them tax advice. So we're giving them Microsoft Partner Advice.
I like it. It seems very fitting. Just a few housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded. It will be shared with you in the next 48 hours after the webinar with the presentation. So if there's any links or anything like that you see, obviously you can try to click your screen, but that's kind of tricky. So it'll be part of what we send you after the webinar. If you have questions, there is a Q&A box in the software that we're using. Don't hesitate to fill it up with questions. Heads up, if the question is really about the other requirements that are changing by Microsoft that are not security related, most likely you will be better served by the webinar that we have coming up, and we're going to talk about it in just a second. If you have any question, how things connect together, anything that Microsoft said that doesn't make sense to you, which happens sometimes, just let us know. Today we'll cover a few things. So we'll talk about generally the partner requirements as they are introduced by Microsoft, and then we'll dig down into the mandatory security requirements. We'll cover some of the recommended security requirements, and the reason for that is very simple, is if they're recommended today, they'll probably be mandatory tomorrow. I think it's a little bit unavoidable to think that Microsoft is sort of taking things step by step, but the feeling when you read their documentation and their announcements and things like that is that this is a step towards what they want. So I think it makes sense for you guys as MSPs today to look at the recommended requirements. We will take a minute to make it easier with Office Protect. That's what Sherweb is here for, is make things easier. And then we'll talk about a number of resources that we have available, most of them free and just available to you as partner. So something that you definitely want to stick around for. A lot of the value from this conversation will be in that those useful resources. If we have any time at the end, we'll try to answer as many questions as you guys have. Definitely don't hesitate to ask. We know how unsettling it is when Microsoft introduces changes to their program. We feel it in the conversation that we have with all of our partners. That's why we do these sessions, is so you have a chance to ask your questions, and we'll try to provide as much information as possible. We'll get started. So very first, oh yeah, thank you. So this may seem odd, but we're advertising within our own webinar. So you may recognize me and Camille as often involved with the Office Protect product line. Office Protect is the easiest way for any MSP to confidently secure and protect all their Microsoft 365 tenants. We believe that. So we created a product specifically for you guys to make it easier to secure Microsoft 365 tenant. The challenge with Microsoft 365 is not that it's not secure. It's very secure. It's exceptionally secure, but you have to manage it, and you have to know what you don't know, basically. And that's where Office Protect comes in. If you're a super advanced PowerShell expert and everything, may not be you know most of the things that are in there, but most MSPs and all of our partners that we work with, we have thousands of partners that are on the product now. They find that it really helps them to secure their tenant in an easy way, in a way that makes sense for an MSP. We'll get back to Office Protect at the end. We will focus this conversation around Microsoft and its CSP requirements, but I wanted to take the opportunity, since there's so many of you here present, to mention Office Protect and encourage you guys to have a look. So let's dive right in. New partner requirements overview. So what are we talking about? Like I hope that for most of you it wasn't a surprise when you got the email that there were new requirements. So big change from Microsoft. I'll touch very briefly on the overall changes. and then we'll dig into security specifically, because that's what we're here today for. That's what we're here for today. Enforced on September 1st. For validation, like to be recognized as a partner, make sure that you have shared the correct partner ID in the Sherweb portal. Sherweb portal used to be called Cumulus. We're now calling it Sherweb portal, but Cumulus. The associated partner ID, not your global partner IDs. That's sort of a basic requirement to even be part of the conversation. You need to make that association with Microsoft clearly known. You need to accept the CSP and direct reseller Microsoft partner agreement. That's a mouthful. And there is, I believe this is new, maybe Alex, you can jump in, but there is now a business vetting. So Microsoft will verify your company data, name, address, primary contact detail. What you can do as an MSP is verify your status in your admin center portal under account settings, legal information. So is this completely new, or was this already sort of a soft requirement?
That's a great question, because the key word on here is enforced September 1st. So none of this is a change except for the enforced part. So the global partner ID, partners used to have just one identifier. So maybe a Sherweb partner from 5 years ago put in their partner ID in Cumulus. Things were great. They've been getting cashbacks, recognitions, and all that for all these years. As of September 1st, that doesn't work anymore. You need to have the right partner ID for your transactions to get recognized properly. So again, for Sherweb partners, no impact on end customer service. It's not going to break stuff as of September 1st, but we don't want you to lose recognition of those customers and those cashbacks. I'm going to keep pushing our webinar on Thursday whenever I get to my third sentence. So that was my third sentence. Join the webinar on Thursday.
So starting October 1st, that's new. So a minimum of $1,000 USD billing revenue over the past trailing 12 months. So in your last 12 months, do you have $1,000 of billed revenue with Microsoft? Should be easy enough, but if you don't have it, that can be a concern for sure. We at Sherweb have some, what's the word in English? But we have some measure that can help you to keep going, even if you're smaller than that, but it will definitely impact you. And then the topic du jour, 2 to 3 new mandatory security requirements. So let's get into that. Before we get into that, what happens if you're not compliant? So you will not be eligible to remain an authorized CSP partner. What does that mean? And I'll go briefly. You'll lose all incentive, which I think with the margins that you make, like that we all make on Microsoft 365, those incentives are key. So that's a big problem, the revenue recognition of Microsoft. There will be, depending how you're situated, there'll be offboarding and deauthorization protocols will take effect. You won't be able to set up GDAP, a granular delegated admin privileges relationship with your end customers, and you might lose your ability to perform new transactions. The other kick in the groin, you will only be eligible to reapply after 12 months. So those things combined means you really don't want to miss this window here. So now that you're maybe panicking a little bit, let me give you the solution to that panic. Next slide. So we have a webinar on the overall requirements and what Sherweb can do for you to help, how maybe to mitigate impacts, which was the word I was looking for, all of that. There is not a ton about security in that other webinar. You're in the right place if you want to hear about security. So we put the QR code here if you want to register right here for the webinar that's on Thursday. That's probably the best way to do it. Otherwise, you can go to our learning center where you can register as well. Quick word about the Partner Admin Center, Microsoft Admin Center. I'm sure you're all familiar. So the security requirements section that you can see here, top right of the fake screen, is only currently available to direct bill resellers. So that means that for you guys that are under Sherweb, you would not typically currently see this badge, and you can't click on it. So that's an important thing. Don't go looking for it. Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, has not made it available for now. We hear that they're working on it. We can't give you a date to when it will be available. The good news is that's why we're here. That's why we did what we did in Office Protect, to help you anyway, even without access to that portal. The requirements are detailed in Microsoft Learning Center. There's quite a bit there. We leverage a lot of that for today's presentation. Some of it is not 100% clear, but I would say generally good job by Microsoft in explaining what the requirements are. And that document is a pretty key part of learning it. And then a part of the requirements, and this is kind of early, but part of the requirements is around the multi-factor authentication. The details for those can be gathered in the Entra ID admin portal, one of the many admin portal of Microsoft. We'll talk about what kind of information you can get there and what you might be missing as well. So a quick word about the security score, because if you do have access to the security page, let's say you're also a direct partner or something like that, you would get a security score. Each requirement that's associated as either a out of 10 or out of 20 points, and you learn like how you're doing. And they're all or nothing. They're all 0 or full marks. Like there isn't like 12.5 out of 20 that doesn't exist. The overall partner security score is the sum of all these scores, including the recommended stuff. So even the stuff that's not mandatory. But the compliance relies only on the mandatory requirements. So the only thing it looks at to say if you can continue to be a CSP partner is the mandatory requirements. What are those mandatory requirements, you may ask? So I'll let Camille take over and tell you guys about the mandatory requirements and the recommended requirements. Just a reminder, and I see that a bunch of people have already asked questions. That's great. If you have questions, please ask them. Alex has been nice enough to participate and answer some of those questions. And also, we may take some at the end to communicate to everybody as well. So don't hesitate. Camille?
Thanks, Guillaume. So let's start with what Microsoft expects from you starting October 1st. First, security requirement is quite an easy one. You need to designate a security contact for your partner tenants. So meaning in your partner admin center. You can find it under the account settings section in legal info. So please make sure that under security contact, you have a contact. Why Microsoft is asking for that is that if there is any security related issue that happens, Microsoft needs to be able to contact you to like communicate the issue, recommend the appropriate steps. So that designated security contact is the person or the group of person that is responsible for security on your partner tenants. So again, that's the easiest one.
And to be clear, like we mentioned that the security report side of the panel doesn't exist for indirect partners, but this exists for direct partners. Yes, like they can go today and set their security contact, right?
Yes, yes. Okay. The only section that is not available to indirect partners is the security section. So where you can see your complaint states all of the requirements, but everything you need to do, you can actually do it. You just don't have guidance in the admin center to do it.
Okay, thank you.
So second one is about MFA. You need to enable MFA for admin roles in your partner tenants. When we talk about admin roles, it's not all admins. There's a list of like 10 different roles. It's explained in the Microsoft documentation. So for example, you have global admins, security admins, SharePoint, Exchange, help desk administrators. So not all of them, but yeah, like 10 of them. So Microsoft asks you to cover them with MFA, but unfortunately in the admin center, even if you have access to the security section, you don't have much details in there. If I look at what I have here, I have the number of admins MFA registration, who's like the number of admins that are covered but not registered, but I don't know who exactly. So I still need to dig down in my Microsoft Entra ID to spot the ones that are in issue. So how to make sure you're compliant? First, you need to make sure your administrators or all of your organization is covered with an MFA policy. You have 3 different options here. First, security defaults. It covers everyone in all situations. Users can snooze for 14 days, I think, before it's enforced on the organization. and there is no license requirements. So that's the easy way, the go-to, I'd say, if you're not a premium tenant. I will get to that in a minute. Second option is per user MFA. Per user MFA is quite a question mark. It's been a question mark for some years now, because Microsoft advertises it as a legacy method to enable MFA. And they were planning at one point to decommission it, but it's not yet been done. So we don't know if Microsoft will keep it. But with per user MFA, you had access to a more granular MFA enablement that has been transitioned to conditional access policy. With conditional access policy, you can enable MFA more granularly. So, for example, only for your admins for that requirements. You can also exclude some accounts, exclude some geographical regions, things like that. So very granular, but it's only available through premium licenses. So Microsoft Business Premium or Entra ID P1 or P2 licenses. So at the end, we do not recommend using per user MFA. If you have business premium licenses, we recommend that you go through conditional access. And if you don't have premium licenses, please go through security defaults. That way you're sure you won't have any bad surprises in the coming years. Second thing you need to check is the authentication method policies that are enabled on your tenants, just to make sure that your user will be able to register a proper authentication method, and then you will be able to check the compliance. So again, that's the easy part on your side, because it only relies on configuration. You have everything to configure that through your admin portals. But the second step is to make sure that all of your users are protected with MFA and have registered a valid authentication method. So again, a user is protected only when he's covered with an MFA policy and he has registered on an MFA authentication method, just like Microsoft Authenticator, FIDO2 security keys, Windows Hello for Business, or other methods. So you need to check whether the user has registered. If you have Entra ID P1 or P2 licenses, you have a section, it's under, I think, authentication method and then user registrations details. So that's pretty easy to make sure who's registered or not. However, if you do not have premium licenses, you will need to go through each of the users and check their authentication methods in Microsoft Entra ID. So no easy way here to check that. Now, we know that devil hides in the details, especially when it comes to Microsoft and MFA management. So as the admin center does not provide any details about who's compliant or not, or why they're not compliant, even when you have access actually to the security section, we have kind of retro-engineered Microsoft rules, because it's not in the documentation either, to ensure you have all use cases to make it easier for you. So let's play a small game here. If an account is covered with security defaults or per user MFA or MFA conditional access policy that applies in all situations, and the user is registered on a valid authentication method, no surprise here, the user is considered as compliant. Now, if an account is covered with an MFA conditional access policy, that does not apply in all situations, for example, you excluded some IPs or some applications from asking MFA, does Microsoft assess you as compliant or not? Now, it's kind of a question mark here. From our test, we assessed that Microsoft assesses you as compliant. Now, it doesn't quite make sense, because an admin that is, for example, asks for MFA only when logging in to one application, one specific application, doesn't make him covered with MFA and protected in all situations. So it's not quite clear here. We do not exactly know whether there are some specific conditions that makes Microsoft assessing you as not compliant. So again, big question mark here. For now, from what we've seen, it's the user will be compliant, but we'll make some communications and things like this if we find the answer in all use cases for conditional access policies. Another easy one, the account is covered with an MFA policy, but user did not register on a valid authentication method. No surprise, is not compliant. Now the account is disabled. So disabled account means sign-in is blocked, so the user cannot access his account, and either the user is not covered with a policy or the user didn't register. Quite a big surprise here because it says as not compliant by Microsoft, meaning you will have to unblock the user, make sure that it's covered with MFA, and make sure that the user will register an authentication method here, and then reblock the user if you need to. So yeah, please take a look at your disabled user. It's not intuitive, but it's what it is. Now, if the account is soft deleted, when I mean soft deleted, you have deleted the user account and you still have access to a backup from the deleted user section in Microsoft Entra ID, and the user was not covered with MFA or user didn't register. It doesn't matter. Microsoft doesn't take a look at soft deleted users. Fortunately, user does not exist anymore in your organization, so that makes sense. Now, if the account is a guest user, and it's not covered with MFA or user didn't register, you need to cover them and you need to make sure the user registers for MFA. Again, it's not super intuitive, but you need to keep in mind that MFA applies to the user in your organization. So if you cover the user with MFA, when the user will try to access to your organization, they will be asked for MFA. But other than that, if MFA is not set up in their own organization, it will have no impact here. So it's not related to the user account, it's related to the user account accessing a specific organization. And last one, that is, I'd say the spicy one, the account is a shared resource. A shared resource usually has a anchor user account that you can see in Microsoft Entra ID in the list of your active users. If the shared resource is not covered with MFA or the account is not registered, it will be assessed as not compliant, even if it's a shared mailbox or a room or anything like this, a shared resource. So you still need to make sure that MFA is enabled and the account is registered.
And just to be clear, in this case of this CSP requirement, it's only the admin users that have to have MFA to be compliant with the requirement. So we're talking about a share mailbox that would also be, let's say, a global admin.
Yes, we've seen a few in organizations, so I still want to mention it here, but also for other MFA requirements that are in a recommended state as of now, it's exactly the same use cases.
Yeah, and maybe that's why they're still in recommended instead of a mandatory because of that weirdness. So does everybody understand what we're saying? Like some of these cases are really odd, but Microsoft doesn't really care, like meaning it's still your responsibility to understand these cases and make sure that that's not what's tripping you. It's probably a good idea to keep this list as a reference to see, like, if you have a weird situation where you think you're compliant, but Microsoft says you're not compliant, well, it could be a disabled account that you didn't check and is creating the issue, something like that, like, or a share mailbox.
I think we'll also write a documentation because that we might find other use cases in the future, and we'll keep an eye if that ever moves. So yeah, we'll also send the documentation to you. And last mandatory requirement is the response to alerts. It only applies to direct build partners and indirect providers, distributors like Sherweb. So I think it does not apply to most of you, but if it does, you need to check your average response time from the alert section to which you have access to. and check the average time over the last 30 days. Just a note that the response time is not the time at which the alert was closed or resolved. You just need to act on it. So you need to acknowledge it and act on it so it becomes active. Now, let's switch to the recommended and future requirements. As Guillaume said earlier, we're not sure whether it's going to change. We're pretty confident that it will. We don't know when. So we recommend that you still keep an eye on the state of the requirements, and also make sure you try to achieve recommended requirements too, if you can. First recommended requirement is again about MFA. So the title of the requirement, according to Microsoft, is all users complete multi-factor authentication registration. It's quite unclear whether it applies to your customer tenants or your tenants. It applies to your tenants. So that's kind of a relief. You don't need all of your customers to have MFA enabled for all of their users. But on your partner tenants, again, you need to make sure the whole organization is covered with an MFA policy the same way you did for the admins. And you need to go through all of the user sheets in Microsoft Entra ID portal to make sure they have all registered a usable authentication method. Again, another one related to MFA, this time on your customers' tenants. So it's the exact same thing as for the required requirements about MFA being applied to the admin roles. Exact same rules, but this time applied to your customers' tenants. So you need to make sure the MFA policy is set up on all of your customers, check the enable authentication methods, and make sure that all the administrators have registered a usable authentication method. The exact same thing as the ones we already discussed. Again, in your partner admin center, even when you have access to the security section, there is no much detail here. So Microsoft will tell you how many admins have MFA enabled, how many non-admins have MFA enabled, but you don't know how many admins do not have MFA enabled and who they are. So you need to go through all your users list again. And last one is the Azure subscription having a spending budget one. So this one is quite unclear because it's still in the Microsoft documentation, but it kind of disappeared from our partner admin centers. So not too sure about that one, but still it's a good recommendation, and we also recommend that you do it. So you should discuss with your customers their monthly spending expectations when it comes to Azure, and set a spending budget on their subscriptions to avoid higher than anticipated bills.
Without the opinion of your clients, you can set alerts. Like alerts don't hurt anybody, like they don't necessarily stop the spending, but at least you'll know if anything weird happens. And if at the end of the day, it's your client sort of increasing their usage and great, terrific, doesn't change anything. If it's a problem, then you'll act a little bit quicker. So I don't think there's any downside for anybody to set alerting and budget. And then when you're a little bit more comfortable with when things go a little bit more stable in with an Azure subscription, then you can just be more proactive in locking things out.
Yeah, exactly. So the spending budget itself doesn't place a ceiling on the spending. It will alert you when customers have reached 80% or more of their usage, so you can shut down resources if needed. Time to talk about Office Protect. We've talked about bad news. Now let's talk about one of the solutions we have for you to manage these new requirements. So let me go through Office Protect. If you don't know it, this is what Office Protect looks like. We've added a new section here. As you don't have access to the security section, we have developed this feature to help you with the security requirements. So first step is to select your partner tenant and assess its compliance. You will be asked to sign in with a global administrator, as we need to install a partner app on your tenant to make sure we can fetch all of the data we need. You also have access, by the way, to the history of the reports if you ever need to keep track of your improvements. So let's dig down into the report details. First thing that's important to note is that Microsoft does not provide technically all of the data we need to assess your compliance, unfortunately. So the same way you don't have access to the security section, we don't have access to all of the data we need, but we try to infer on some data, so we provide you the more insights we can. So for the security contact and the average response to alert, you have all guidance you need. We tell you what it is, where to find it. You have a direct button to the concern section in your partner admin portal. Same for the alerts. So these, again, are an easy one. But when having Office Protect becomes even more interesting is when it comes to MFA. When you onboard a tenant in Office Protect, we have all of the data we need to assess your compliance when it comes to MFA through the MFA audit section. So if I take this example, I have 2 admins that are not compliant. If I go to MFA audit, I know more about these 2 administrators and why they're not compliant. So for example, here, they are protected with security defaults, but they did not register on any MFA authentication method. One of the remediation actions that's possible here, because it's not in your power to make sure the user is properly registered, is the user have to do it. So we suggest that you send a registration campaign to these users. We have a template generator in Office Protect, so you don't have to put all of the details about the MFA. So I'm selecting all of my admins. You have the template here. You can edit it if you need, customize the email, and then you can download the email template. All of the recipients will be pre-filled. You just have to open it in Outlook and click send, and that's it. If I go back to the report now and switch to the recommended requirements, exactly the same principle here. So you have all of your customer tenants insights. If your customer is onboarded in Office Protect, will have all data about their MFA, same as your partner tenant. If you do not have Office Protect on your customer tenant, it will show as no active subscription. We still have the list of your customers through the Partner Admin Center. That's how we are able to assess that. Now, if I take a look at one of these, I see that there is 140 users that are required to use MFA. That's a lot. That's usually not.
It's a very poorly behaved customer or tenant.
So we can see in that case that there is no MFA configuration at all on the tenants. To remediate that, you can go to the set section into Office Protect settings. And here you have the enable MFA setting. You can choose whether you want to enable it via security defaults or via conditional access. Only when it's available, because again, it's only available with premium licenses. So if you don't have Entra ID P1 or P2, we will default to security defaults. But if you ever upgrade your tenant to a premium license, then we'll be able to switch to conditional access. So if I click here, save and apply, it will create all of the rules, either the configurations or the policies you need to be protected on all of your organization. Last thing I want to show you is about so again, in the report, I was telling you that currently we do not have all of the information from Microsoft when it comes to indirect resellers. If I take the example of a direct partner, you should be able to see that. So you have the overall compliance state, you have your partner security score, count of mandatory requirements and recommended requirements, and you have the state of compliance on each of these requirements, including these ones. So whenever Microsoft will enable us to fetch this data, it will be automatic, and you will have this report instead of the current one that shows as unavailable.
So I think we're done with the demonstration, right, Camille? Because we're almost out of time.
We are.
Okay. I'm going to start answering some questions while Camille switched back to the presentation. How to access Office Protect has been asked a few times now in the question, and I'm kicking myself for not clearly sort of answering it in the presentation. But the easiest way to do it is if you've bought our standard SKU like Microsoft 365, Business Standard, whatever, they all come with 30 days of Office Protect so that you have a chance to go and configure your settings. So now one more thing that you can do in that window is you can go and check our CSP compliance report. If you don't have any current, like recent tenants that you've added and you don't have any of those 30-day time period to try, we have a not for resale program at Sherweb with most of our products, and Office Protect, the software, is free forever for your own organization. So I think that for most of you partners, like if you're existing partners, that's probably the best way to get access to it forever for free. So you can activate Office Protect on your own tenant, get the information on your security, configure it, monitor it, see if you like it. But you can also leverage that to get our CSP compliance report as well, forever free. Like there's nothing here that you have to pay for. Our assumption is that you'll like Office Protect enough that you'll want to add it to your clients and will want to pay for it. But even if you don't, we'll still love you. We really do want to help with your security. One more thing that we do to help with your security, by the way, and I think that's the next slide, is we have a security assessment for any Microsoft tenant, even tenants that are not currently your clients. So if you go to scan.officeprotect.com, office-protect.com, you can get a free scan where we'll compare your configuration to the best practices that are recommended. So you can get a clear view there. There was a few questions around where to exactly set the security contact, the emergency contact. There was some question around where to see exactly your configuration for MFA and if people are compliant or not. Contact us after this webinar. We'll spend more time. Like I don't want to necessarily go way over time for this, but it's all fairly straightforward. The security contact is in the tenant configuration and the partner portal. The sad part of the MFA enrollment and all that is if you don't have, or stop me, Camille, I'm repeating what you said, and I think I'm accurate. If you don't have the premium licenses, you have to go in each and every customer to check, which is where it doesn't make a lot of sense. Why don't you use Office Protect? Should you use Office Protect? If you have the premium licenses, then there are reports for that, right, in Entra ID.
No, so actually, it's not when it comes to MFA on customers. It's in your own partner tenant. If you have a business premium license, you have access to a report that states all of the users and their registration states, because that's the most complicated part. The policy one is not that complicated. Checking the registration can be very time consuming. So you have a report if you're a premium tenant. If you're not, you need to go through the details of each user.
Or you can use Office Protect.
Yeah.
So Office Protect questions in the chat since you're on the topic.
Okay. Do you want to ask me the question if you have it in front of you?
Oh, sure. I guess you don't have because I have just the ones that are not answered that are shown. So they're asking about the white label version of the security assessment from Office Protect. When is that coming out? And is this a tool that you would recommend whenever you are prospecting potential customers?
Okay, so yes to the last part. It's one of the reasons we created it, completely accessible outside of Cumulus and everything Sherweb, is that you can use it on a tenant that is not your client yet. So it's a good way to show that they are not currently configured in a secure way. and that you know what you're talking about. So you could be like, hey, let's do this test. If you're perfectly configured, then I have very little to offer you. And so far, it's 100% like no partners are the way, or no tenant are the way that they should be. So very much so, I would use it as a prospecting tool. White label version, not so far, but the branding is fairly minimal. Camille, I don't think we have a timeline, right, to a white label version?
No, not yet. It's identified, it's been identified, but not yet planned.
Yeah, so we've heard the ask. It's currently in our backlog, but no exact date when we'll get to it. If it's something that you would like, again, contact us, let us know. Duly noted, even from today, we'll prioritize it accordingly. Alex, anything else you wanted to address, like to the group from the questions, like anything you feel everybody should hear?
Yes, Paul, I have just the, I don't know if you answered that because I'm not great at doing two things at once, but the how do they get the NFR Office Protect? I'm sure you answered, but probably to say it again.
So it's not by default on for anybody. So you have to talk to your account representative or our partner team, which you can see on the screen now, and you have to ask. So you just ask to enable NFR licenses, and then you can say specifically, I'm looking for Office Protect, and they'll make that available for you. Like I said, in the NFR program, Office Protect is free forever. So why not would be my question. Yeah, so that would be the way to do it.
Yeah, no, otherwise, very active crowd in the chat. Very happy that I was on mute because you would have heard my keyboard warrior going crazy. It reminded me of like the old MIRC days, like just chatting, with people. But great questions. Seems everybody is.
So I'll answer one that I see. I think you already answered. So somebody asked, can I get Office Protect if I'm at PAX 8 or if my tenant, let's say, is not with Sherweb, would be a better way to put it? Yes. So you can provision and enable the Office Protect with any tenant, any Microsoft 365 tenant, any, like really, like if you're in an enterprise agreement, if you're like, it works with everything. Our assumption is you'll like working with Sherweb so much that you'll bring everything to Sherweb because of Alex mostly. But Office Protect itself will work with any kind of nonprofit, academic license. Like it doesn't really matter. It just works.
Right, and we would recommend, like, let's say you are with one of the other providers, you sign up with Sherweb, it's free, you create your partner account, create that internal organization, flag it to the team so that you can start leveraging that Office Protect NFR with those features we just talked about today.
So there's that for sure, and you can provision Office Protect and pay for it, like as a product, on any tenant, even if you haven't moved the tenant to Sherweb. I just want to be clear.
Correct. Okay.
One question I saw that I like was I use, like, I'm as a partner, I use a third-party MFA solution with Microsoft 365. So my understanding, and I don't know nobody knows everything about Microsoft 365, but I'll try to answer. It works just fine. So Microsoft knows that you have an MFA apply, and it does the logic and everything, but it sends it to your tool when it needs to send it somewhere instead of sending it to its own MFA. So in theory, there shouldn't be any problem with using a third-party software to do MFA on Microsoft 365 when it comes to compliance. I see Camille disagreeing, at least in part. So
I'm not too sure. I'm honestly not too sure because we've seen some cases where Microsoft was specifically saying we do not take third-party MFA solutions into consideration. So not too sure about that. We need to check that.
And I would say that in my experience, it's an answer today that's going to be a different answer tomorrow. So right now in the security workspace, the reporting only is accurate with Microsoft Authenticator. But by the time that recommendation of MFA in your end customer tenants goes live, so not the requirement coming today, but the ones like at some point in the future, I strongly suspect that IT Glue, Duo, Okta, all those other mainstream third-party identity tools will work.
They kind of have no choice. Like I understand the desire to drive their own tools, but like that's kind of, it would be a very surprising kind of decision, and I don't think they would be able to get away with it. So it's a little bit as the same thing as the per user MFA. They've wanted to kill it for a long time, but I think a lot of people are dependent on it and use it so that they were like, well, all right, we don't want to hurt the security of our clients. So Generally, Microsoft will try to drive whatever it wants for a long time, but then when it gets to the actual rubber meets the road, then they'll do what makes sense. Like they'll understand that reality has an impact on everybody.
I've seen a question about how do we get access to the recording. So you will receive a communication from us after the webinar with all of the webinar information, including the deck and the recording YouTube video. In 24 or 48 hours, I think.
Yeah, usually it's 48 hours. Let's give a chance to our communication team to do their job, but yeah, usually 48 hours. If you felt it's been too long, you haven't received it, like you should let us know. If not, most of our webinars go on our YouTube channel, so you can see the recordings there as well. Recommend it to your friends and everything.
And skip to the parts you only want to see.
Yes, you can skip my face for most of it. There's a lot of question about break glass accounts. I think those are very valid questions. Break glass accounts are basically like, there's some of the best practice recommend that you keep an account with administrators, right? Sort of existing and outside of your sort of normal operations and everything. My understanding is there is no exception for break glass account. They have to follow the compliance requirements and everything. It'd be kind of weird to not have them, because at the end of the day, they can be accessed and everything. So it's kind of often security runs into convenience or practicalities. So it's one of those cases where it's hard to do everything best. But yeah, my assumption is those will have to be covered, or today they definitely have to be covered for you to be compliant.
Exactly, and it's part of one of the answers that I had written on there, that it was a great way, and it was an official Microsoft documentation to say, hey, keep a small subset of users without these things. You don't want to lock yourself out of your account and all of that. But the idea was that this method was until the account was up and running and you were satisfied, that afterwards you would remove those subsets. But a lot of people started to kind of run with it, the in case of emergency break glass, type of setup. It's been done, it's there, it's available. We're going to keep it for those circumstances. But with privileged identity management and other ways to elevate your permissions now, you have other methods. You don't need to have that break glass account that's not protected by MFA. You have other approaches, other philosophies around that, but it is a change, and I do feel for the partners that were kind of making it as the onboarding process of of customers, create their break glass account, this and that. Whenever they get access to that workspace, they're going to see that for their end customer tenants, none of them are compliant.
So Camille, do you mind putting us back on the slide that has the QR code for Thursday? So I want to finish by thanking Alex for joining us. He's a very busy man at Sherweb, because you guys have a lot of questions about Microsoft programs. So if you want to make him happy, do him a favor and join his webinar on Thursday on the rest of the requirements and the changes. Honestly, when we originally talked about it, the security requirements seemed pretty small in comparison to everything else. I think that's a bit of it's true in the sense that the rest of them are pretty big and can be pretty intimidating and may change the way that you have to operate when it comes to Microsoft. I still think that the security changes will be very impactful on the operational level, and you have to take care of them. But there's a lot more to learn about those changes, and I would strongly recommend joining the webinar on Thursday.
There is no weakest link. All of these changes are important, and you missed one of them, the whole thing.
Yeah. And I want to thank everybody for coming out, especially Camille, Alex, for joining the call and presenting, but also like the hundreds of people that were in this webinar. It's great to see your interest. The questions were great. Like it's one of our most popular webinars that we've done recently. Thanks Microsoft for throwing wrenches in a bunch of gears, but I'm always excited to get the opportunity to talk to our partners and clients. Don't hesitate if you have further questions. If you want to talk about your case in particular, these are meant to give you most of the information, but then we're happy to work with you on the specifics of your situation. So don't hesitate to reach out and go further with us. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.